Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the President and the Executive Committee of the chapter to the webinar conducted by CS Sri Lanka chapter of Western Region KSA. For today's session, we have CA members joining us from Sri Lanka, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and KSA, and also from various other parts of the world. We also have members of other accounting bodies and colleagues from other professional bodies participating. I thank you all on behalf of the chapter for accepting our invitation and joining with us today. Participants, please feel free to post your questions relevant to today's topic in Q&A box. For CASL members, we will be sharing a link at the end of the session to collect details for CPD claim. Our panelist today is Hisham Jifri. Hisham is a manager in PwC Academy, Middle East. He also has functioned as senior lecturer in Bahrain Institute of Banking and Finance. Hisham also has worked for KPMG and Ernst & Young. Hisham is passionate about teaching, training, mentoring, coaching, writing, and public speaking. Hisham, it's an honor to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Usman. 17 years ago, around 2007, I had just joined a new company and I was very happy to go to office because it was in the World Trade Center on the 32nd floor of the East Tower. But within the first few months of joining the business, my boss asked me to do something. Now, my boss had a very nice name and his name was Dinesh. Dinesh asked me to look through the oil prices and to see whether there was anything that can be done with regard to investment. Now, Dinesh was very special because Dinesh had a stomach that started from around his neck. And the idea behind his investment was that at that point in time, the price of oil was about 71 US dollars. And he told me that there is a likelihood that it would increase and probably double. Because there was a connection between oil prices and rubber prices, he said that very likely Sri Lankan plantation sector would be doing really well. Now, the thing is, with regard to any type of research, it's important to know that you need information. Now, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news was that there was a rubber research institute and it was in Sri Lanka. The bad news was that there was no automation and none of the material was available online. So one fine day in 2007, Dinesh and myself got into his car. His car was a blue color Maruti Suzuki Alto. The car was about this big. Dinesh was about this big. And I think that's why he wanted me to accompany him. I was the only person who would fit in his car. We drove to the Rubber Research Institute, and as luck would have it, there was a huge thunderstorm, heavy thunderstorm, lightning and thunder, and the electricity was not available at the Rubber Research Institute. Dinesh, being a smoker and an eternal optimist, he said, Ashok, don't worry. I have my lighter. You have a pen and a paper. So let's try to note down the monthly rubber prices from 2007 all the way back to 1960. So there we were in the Rubber Research Institute. No light, no electricity, no batteries to power the laptop. Dinesh's Zippo lighter, me with a pen and paper, marking down the monthly rubber prices to 2007 all the way back from 2006, from 1970. We come back to the office cross-eyed. We put that information onto a spreadsheet. We find that there is a very good relationship and that the companies would probably be making money. We spent about 3 months analyzing the data, sanitizing the data, doing the financial projections. And once the report was released, 3 months later, it made more money than all of the research reports combined for that particular year. I use this story very often to convince people of the value of research, that the amount of time that you spend looking for the right type of information will give you insight into the right sort of investment. Now that's my story, and I want you to answer me a few questions. As always, it's always nice to have a little bit of a quiz. So feel free to put your answer down in the chat group. What was the year that I had joined the company? 2007. What building was my office in? Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Raushan. Thank you so much. Let me just move this to the side. Which tower? Absolutely. It was the East Tower. Do you remember the floor? 32nd floor, absolutely. What was my boss's name? Dinesh. It was Dinesh Fernando, absolutely right. Do you remember the car that he drove? Yep, it was a Maruti Suzuki Alto. How many months did we work on this report? That's absolutely right. We worked on it for about 3 months. Was it a profitable project? Why would you say that? Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Right. And finally, will you remember this story if I ask you the details a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? You didn't know me, you didn't know my boss, you didn't know my company, you didn't know the report. But you were able to almost perfectly recall each and every detail that I spoke about. And this is the transformational power of financial storytelling. I very often use this story to convince people of the value of research and the value of diligence. Would you be able to convince your bosses to allocate you a budget, allocate you some time, allocate you some leeway in order to conduct some research, in order to do some project that will take a little bit of time to generate return on investment? You can present all the budgets that you want, you can speak about all of the ratios that you want, but the power of a story is that it hits someone where it matters. You will be able to feel the emotion, and that creates a bridge between your problem and their solution. And if you're able to create that emotional connection, it's very easy to hear that very important word. Yes, go ahead. The shortest distance between two people is a story. Best example, what we are doing right here, right now. Between me and the screen, there's probably 6 inches, but between me and you, there's miles and miles and miles of distance. But we are able to connect through this virtual screen by this common medium that has been around for such a long period of time. And that is this medium of storytelling. Over the next few minutes, we will speak about where are we right now in this fourth industrial revolution, the era of information and data. What you hear right now is data storytelling. A chart, a diagram, waterfall charts, dashboards, the power of generative AI. But where does that leave you? And what will be your key differentiator? If all of the routine work has been automated, if all of the day-to-day analysis is being done, if all of the information is being collated and summarized through dashboards, where does that leave you, the finance professional, the numbers expert, and the person who knows the true narrative behind the numbers? We will speak about the value proposition and we will explore the components of a great story on how you can use this information practically from tomorrow onwards in order to craft, in order to create, and in order to deliver impactful stories that make your presentation stand out and that allow you to become the go-to person in your organization. If you are interested, then it's my very great pleasure to welcome you to this presentation. In an article that appeared in Accenture, 81% of CEOs confirm that data storytelling is an essential skill for finance professionals. Now, this is not new information. You know it, I know it. But the issue is, so does every other finance professional. Very often, when I make this presentation, the question that I get is, will you be talking about waterfall charts? Will you be talking about dashboards? Will you speak about artificial intelligence? And my answer to all of that is no, because there's plenty and enough, absolutely ample information available on all of those techniques. And the reason why I don't touch upon them is because spreadsheets, analytics, and dashboards won't help you to stand out. Spreadsheets, analytics, and dashboards is what every analyst, accountant, finance professional is now quite adept at preparing. And if you decide to hide behind your spreadsheets, why will it be a disadvantage? It's because of artificial intelligence. In the world that we speak about over the last few weeks, not only is AI becoming popular, but generative AI is taking over all of our conversations. What impact does it have on you? What impact does it have on me? Why should we care? It's very simply because everything that we consider high level finance has been automated. Everything that we did 20 years ago has been automated. Stock counts, asset verifications, invoicing, billing, all of this has been automated, but that's okay. That's the routine tasks. But then comes the medium level tasks, then comes the top level tasks, budgeting, forecasting, predictive analytics, all of these components that we used to brainstorm over sleepless nights, research and find nuggets of information, communicate and put it into a strategy over a long period of time is being automated at a rate of knots. That puts you and me in a very unique situation. We don't know what the next 5 years will hold, but we do know that until artificial intelligence fully comes on board, you are in a very unique situation because you are the generation that's in between the artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, generative AI generation, and the traditional paper based, manual, human based accounting field. You are in this transitionary position and you are beautifully positioned to take advantage of this. But the question is, what will be your differentiator? Because if you do what you've always done, you will get what you've always got. If you are prepared to do the ratios, if you are prepared to do the spreadsheets, if you are prepared to balance the balance sheet, then that's exactly what everybody else out there will be doing. I'd like to amend this quote from Henry Ford a little bit. And I'd like to say, if you do what everyone else does, you will get what everyone else gets. The same bonus, the same promotion, the same increment. And the minute AI takes over, there is nothing, there's absolutely nothing that makes us stand out from the rest of the accounting field. If you want a different result, it's important that you be willing to risk something different. To get something different, you need to be able to do something different. And that something different, ladies and gentlemen, for you and me, is impactful storytelling. Your ability to stand out among a sea of dashboards, your ability to stand out among an avalanche of spreadsheets, your ability to stand out among the number crunchers comes from your capability to present the numbers in a different way, in an impactful way, in a sincere way, in an authentic way, in a credible way that makes you stand out in the minds of your decision makers. If you want to be the go to person, you need to be able to position yourself in the minds of your decision makers. And storytelling, crafted compellingly, delivered impactfully, will do that for you. Because remember, you've spent years, decades, hours, significant amount of sacrifice getting to where you are right now. There is no doubt that you know what you know. But the only issue is how do you let your key decision makers also know that you know what you need to know and that you can deliver what they need to know. Because remember, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. It might be near the coffee machine. It might be in the car park. It might be in the office gathering. It might be while you're stuck for 30 seconds in the elevator. You just never know what question can be posed to you, and you just never know if you can make those 30 seconds impactful, what impact it will have on the next 30 years of your career. Over the next few minutes, let's explore and see how this can make your differentiator. In a study done by the New York University, for training purposes, it was identified that storytelling breaks down communication barriers. And if you think back to some of the biggest conflicts, the knockdown, drag out fights that may have happened in finance rooms across your career, very often it does not happen because of pure personality clashes, but it happens because of miscommunication, misunderstanding, simply because people are not on the same page or they don't want to get on to that same platform. Knowledge levels might be different, expertise might be different, exposure might be different, objectives might be different. But a powerful story will allow you to create that bridge between these different sets of information, between these different sets of people, to get your diverse teams onto the same platform, aligning and harnessing all your capabilities to solve the key problems that you want to solve, to become the key players that you want to become. In this world, the financial storyteller competes in an agile environment, competes with a multitude of fintech tools, competes with big data and predictive analytics, competes with ChatGPT, the new Google, and as of the last few weeks, competes with generative AI as well. What allows you to stand out? Because remember, technology is a good tool, but a bad master. So one of the quotes that keep going around these days is that artificial intelligence will not take over people's jobs, but it will take over the jobs of people who are unwilling to learn AI. So in this environment, how does the financial storyteller start off? It is your capability, it is your ability to breathe life into the numbers. It is your skill to unclutter the confusion, because if you really think about it, and if you be honest, as accountants, we like the clutter and the confusion. Because if not, how is it that we are going to make money? If everybody knows how to structure a cash flow statement, we will be out of a job. If everybody is able to calculate 32 ratios in 15 minutes using advanced Excel over the last 5 years, where will we be? So we like the confusion, we live in the confusion because we thrive in this mess. But beyond a certain point, if you want to move beyond the operational and into the strategic, beyond the realms of being at the risk of automated by all this technology, if you are able to show the profit behind the pain, then you truly stand out because you become the name behind the face. You become the ambassador for the solutions of your business. While I was in Sri Lanka, I did not have a driver's license. Why will I have a driver's license? There is plenty of public transport. At the raise of an arm, there will be a try shop. There was absolutely no need. And I used to travel to the World Trade Center from Vellavatta in a train, and it took me 20 minutes from the World Trade Center all the way up to the railway station in Vellavatta, while getting the benefit of that beautiful coastal scenery as well. So I never wanted to take a driver's license. But in 2009, when I moved to Bahrain, there was no public transport. So it was essential that I learn to drive. So I had gotten my driver's license, and in 2016, I had to make that first big decision. I needed to buy a car. I went to a variety of different dealers, and each of them spoke to me in language that was like Greek and French combined together. They spoke to me about talk, they spoke to me about fuel efficiency, they spoke to me about second-hand market value. All of that was overhead to me. None of that made any sense at all. Finally, I went to a particular dealer, and his name was Felix Miranda. He was tall, he had curly hair, he looked like Lionel Richie without a mustache. And he asked me a couple of questions. He said, Mr. Hisham, are you married? I said, yes. I didn't know why that was relevant to purchasing a car, but I thought I'll humor the man. And then he said, do you have kids? I said, not yet, because I was just expecting, or we were just expecting, a baby girl. And Mr. Felix said something that I still remember. And he said, for you, the car that matters has to have safety features. This car that I'm about to show you has been rated number one for safety features over the last 4 years in the world. And this would be my recommendation. I didn't tell him, but he took the effort to go behind the numbers to understand what my real objective was. He didn't try to sell me, but what he did was he told me a story about safety that connected to my objective. This is the power of storytelling. In a world that competes on dashboards, in a world that competes on deeper and deeper analytics, broader and broader coverage, more and more numbers, your ability to understand a customer whose main complaint will be that nobody listens to me. You throw the numbers at me, but you don't know what my pain point is. If you're able to communicate your solution in this powerful manner using an impactful story, then you become the go-to person for your clients and stakeholders. Jim Rohn is one of my favorite authors, is one of my favorite speaker coaches. And he says effective communication is 20% what you know and 80% how you feel about what you know. So if you think about your favorite coffee shop, if you think about your favorite dress designer, if you think about your favorite hairstylist, if you think about your favorite car wash, if you think about your favorite accounts teacher or mathematics teacher, if such a thing exists, it was always about how they made you feel. Because it was never about the technical difficulty of those numbers, but it was the confidence that they had in you. It was their ability to create a future for you that you hadn't seen. And that motivation brings us to this platform today. In 2005, I had attended an interview to serve as a business studies trainer at a particular very well-known institute in Sri Lanka. And for some reason, I was unable to connect with the lady who was interviewing me. We went back and forth, 25 minutes passed. I was sweating and it was not going well. And then finally, she asked me this question. She said, why is it that you want to teach? What is the purpose behind it? And the only thing that I told her was, Madam, when I teach, it feels like my vocation is my vacation. And she said, when can you start? So if you are able to communicate an emotion, if you are able to communicate what it is that you authentically and sincerely, credibly feel in the most succinct manner, in the most economical manner, you will get to the decision that you want. You will get the answer that you're looking for. But this doesn't happen overnight, impromptu. It's a skill that, just like any other skill, can be learned, and if you ask me, should be learned. The amount of effort that's being put into storytelling today, into effective presentation today, into impactful communication today is significant. There's a huge ecosystem where executives are requesting to be trained on the ability to deliver impactful communications, on the ability to craft compelling stories. This is the world that we are in, but our day to day is filled with the numbers, the spreadsheets, the rows, the columns, the formulas, the cell references, and there's hardly enough time for you and I to invest this time into storytelling. This afternoon, we will try to see some of these very well known but lack of but items that we don't get exposure to. And if combined with your technical financial expertise, you will be able to stand out in the boardroom, in your conversations with the auditors, in your conversations with the regulators, and you will be known as the problem solver rather than the problem highlighter. Michael Hague is a famous story consultant. He has worked with multiple movies, and one of the things he says is the purpose of a story is to evoke emotion, because decision making, although to a certain degree is analytical in nature, but very often you will find that some of the most significant decisions are taken based on emotion. Many years ago, in one of my first experiences at an annual general meeting, there was a heart to heart between the CFO and a very old shareholder. And one of the questions he kept asking was, why don't you pay a higher dividend? You keep on paying off the debt. Why do you pay the bank instead of paying your shareholders the dividend? And the CFO simply asked him, Mr. Shareholder, do you have a credit card? He said, yes, I have a credit card. Do you remember the last time the credit card bill was zero? And the shareholder said, I had the credit card for the last 20 years, but it has never been zero unless it was the very first day it landed in that envelope. And the CFO says, great. Would you imagine a day where you get your credit card bill and the amount that you had to pay was absolutely zero? Would you like that day to come? Wouldn't you cherish that day? Wouldn't it put some additional money in your pocket to go and spend on your family? There was a pregnant pause, and the shareholder said yes. And the CFO says, that's the reason why we want to aggressively pay off our debts. It's short-term pain for long-term gain. I hope that answers your question. The purpose of a story is to evoke emotion. The CFO could have spoken about free cash flow. He could have spoken about the lower cost debt. He could have spoken about the financial risk on the balance sheet, the reduction of the debt to equity ratio. In other words, he could have choose to go overhead. But what he chose to do was to connect on a very personal level with the shareholder and diffuse that situation using a very simple story. You and I know the value of dividend policy. You and I know the impact of payout versus retention. You and I know what reduction of debt can do to cost of capital and the value of a business. But all of this to a day-to-day 60-year-old shareholder might be completely out of the realm of understanding. But your ability to take that person's question seriously and communicate with them on a level that they understand and appreciate makes you someone memorable. In the three stories that I told you, Mr. Felix spoke about the emotion of a father trying to protect his children. The interviewer was trying to get to the bottom of why a professionally qualified person would be trying to become a teacher. And the CFO of the debt-free company was trying to make it clear to someone that I am not siphoning off your money to the bank. Rather, I am putting it in a place where it will be beneficial to you. In this idea equation, if you want to create palpable emotion that gets appreciated and it has true authenticity and sincerity, remember the solution is in my mind, but it gets appreciated when it goes from my heart to somebody else's heart. Are the numbers important? Absolutely. At the end of the day, we are finance professionals. But your ability to take that number and give it context, and that context to be relevant to the decision making process of your audience, that is priceless. So emotion equals one mind, the solution that comes from your mind, but two hearts, yours, the emotion that you feel about your solution, and the pain point that you know that the counterparty on the other side would be feeding as well. Taken a little bit of effort over a period of time, this becomes a process that gets ingrained in your communication, and everything you do will be audience focused, solution driven, solving their problem rather than presenting your spreadsheet. And this is important. Why? Because the analytics, the dashboards, the spreadsheets are available at a fraction of the cost that they used to cost People do business with people. And if you are able to get into that space where they connect you with solutions and they say, this person understood what I wanted to do. They spoke to me in the language that I understand, and this makes me feel very close to their solution. This is the importance of powerful and well crafted storytelling for finance professionals. Now, it's about 4 in the afternoon here, and this is about the time that I have my afternoon coffee. It's very rare that I am at home, and today in the UAE we celebrate the National Day. So I get an afternoon off. So lunch is a luxury. So today I've had lunch, and I always look forward to my 4 o'clock coffee. Now that's what's in it for me. I'm sure that you must be thinking, should I have a cookie with my tea today? Is the AC on too low, too high? Has New Zealand already lost to Bangladesh? Did Kane Williamson get out? Is it too late for me to go out and visit the mall? Will it be crowded because it is Friday? The one question every audience asks, and very definitely the question that you would be asking yourself is, what's in it for me? Very often audiences ask the same question. They're not interested in our analysis. They're not interested in the number of hours that we spent on the spreadsheet. They're not interested that we were working overnight in order to craft this very specific dashboard. They don't care because we don't care. But if you're able to understand with clarity what's in it for me, why will the shareholder listen to me? Why will the bank listen to me? Why will the regulator listen to me? If you're able to understand their perspective, your presentation takes on an entirely different angle. Your ability to connect will become very different. For example, you would be getting up every single morning, getting dressed and going to work. Now you go to work for a company, and we have been hearing this for a long period of time. What's the objective of a company? The objective of a company, of course, to create shareholder wealth. But let's be honest. Do you get up every morning, get dressed, have your coffee and go to work to create shareholder wealth? Before you answer, I don't. I've never in 20 years ever woken up one single day, even in a nightmare, and thought to myself, today is the day I create shareholder wealth. I simply don't. So when I go to work, it's to create shareholder wealth to me. So if that is the case, when the company speaks about shareholder wealth creation, you need to ask yourself the question, are you connecting specifically with what the employee's mindset is? If not, it's conversation without a purpose. When we speak about not-for-profit organizations, we speak about the 3 E's: efficiency, input-based measure; effectiveness, objective-based measure; economy, the ability to save money. Who cares? Ultimately, it is your ability to craft a solution. It is your ability to communicate it with sincerity, your ability to deliver it with confidence that will get you that particular contract. And if you have ever been in a competitive tender process, if you have ever been in a negotiation, if you have ever competed with other firms for one piece of business, you would know this. Now, if you're an employee, if you're talking to me in terms of bonus, promotion, increment, was now you're talking my language. Getting onto that same wavelength, understanding which of the tools in your arsenal that you need to use with which key stakeholder is critical. Because however good the spreadsheet is, however great the analysis is, it will not work with everybody. It will not work every time, and it will not work to the same degree. So if that is the case, your ability to reach in to the emotions of your audience becomes supremely important. The one unforgivable sin that no audience forgives you is sameness. They might forgive that you're being late. They might forgive that your camera doesn't work. They might forgive that your audio may not work. They might forgive that you get logged out of Zoom. They might forgive that sometimes you stumble with your presentation, but they will not forget. They will not forgive if you're boring. So if you present the same slide that every firm presents, if you present the same graph that you presented every year, if you present the same table that's available online, if you present the same diagram, the same ratio, the same analysis as your competitor, you don't stand out. So what do you bring to the table? And it compounds by the fact that everyone knows the issue. It's a common issue. Everybody possibly knows the solution, but what's your unique perspective? What is it that you bring to the table that nobody else brings? In 2008, when I was working for an investment firm, an assistant accountant walked in to the monthly meeting and she said, I have a proposal to make and I'd like to make it. And the CEO said, yes, we'll give you 15 minutes. Please make the presentation. So Chamari comes in. She's about 5 feet, no inches tall, but you would not know it by her voice. You would think that she's a very quiet young lady, but inside that tiny physique was a bullhorn of a voice. And what she came and said was, in our business, every single day, there's a huge amount of cash lying in bank accounts in the form of cash. My suggestion is that we put this into an overnight repo. Now, immediately, the internal auditor, the financial controller, all of them jumped onto her and said, why should we do this? These other people's money. Are we even allowed to do this? What is the risk associated with it? How will this look in my balance sheet? Is this even ethical to do? But then Chamari said one thing. She said, if we do this for 30 days, the interest that we earn on it is enough to pay the salaries of the finance department. If we do this for 30 days, we will make enough money to pay the salaries of the finance department. One sentence, one well-crafted piece of information that hits the emotions of that audience. If you understand that every single business has a common set of problems, but if you're able to present your solution in a slightly different way, rather than talking about the cash flow and how what percentage will impact which ratio, if you're able to quickly, concisely, and effectively close that gap, and if you're able to use story, you will be able to get there far more effectively and efficiently than any spreadsheet would ever do that for you. Now, in presenting, in analyzing, and assessing your solution, I always use this particular method, and it comes from the poem The Elephant Child by Rudyard Kipling. In order to communicate their problem to them, and in order to present your unique solution, I always use this particular methodology. What happened? Why did it happen? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where did it happen? And who is responsible? And in presenting the solution, what is my solution? Why is it the solution to go for? What is the timeline associated with its delivery? Specifically, how will I deliver this? Where will it happen? Is it virtually, hybrid, physical, over a period of time at the clients in person? And then finally, who are the key responsible parties in order to deliver it? If you're able to remember this, then all of your solutions will include all of the ingredients that the audience is looking for. Because remember, sometimes, at least for me, I get some really good ideas 2 days after the meeting or on the drive back or while I'm having coffee on the weekend. You don't want that to happen. You want to come out of a meeting, you want to come out of a negotiation, having left everything on the table, bringing back nothing home. And I've always found that these 6 honest serving men are a great structure for you to structure your story, your solution around a common platform and deliver it effectively time and time again to identify the problem of the client and also to structure your unique solution in a way that it is unforgettable. The discussion that we're about to have has taken me around 10 years, to understand and appreciate. And it will probably take me another 50 years to fully appreciate it. This is something that I will probably be researching and investigating till the day I breathe my last. the story structure. In any story, it's ideal that you have an opening, a body, and a conclusion. These are the three important characteristics of a story. But it's also important that from your opening, you transition logically to the body. And from the body, your main story, you transition logically to the conclusion. Now, there are some people, it might be a favorite grandpa, it might be a favorite grand aunt, it might be a jovial uncle, it might be a very sarcastic, sharp tongued aunt, but they are born storytellers. And each of their stories, they pinch you with a little bit of emotion, they tickle you with a little bit of humor, but there's always a call to action. And they say, this is why you must eat your broccoli. This is why you must drink your water every day. And this is the reason why you must listen to your parents. Story is as old as time. But our ability to take this structure and weave it around the financials and then deliver it seamlessly is a skill that is worth mastering. You always open with impact. Now, you might notice that I was very rude with you today. When I started this presentation, I didn't wish you good evening. I didn't ask you how they were. And actually, I didn't even thank Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. That was all on purpose. Because had I started with that, your impression would have been, this is just another presentation. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. I hope you're having a good Friday. That's the unforgivable sin of sameness. But I started with a story. If you open your presentation just like everybody else has opened, what makes you different? What makes the audience stand up, sit up, draw their breath, leave their phone down, and listen to you? What convinces them that you have done the work, considered the context of the audience, and structured your presentation in order to give them the solution they want? Open with impact. It can be a shocking statement. One of the best that I have ever heard was Craig Valentine when he said, nobody in the world has ever died of snake bite. Nobody in the world has ever died of snake bite. It's the poison that kills them. Just two sentences that illustrates the point that you want to make. It could be humor, but you've got to be a little careful with humor because some people can carry off humor. Sometimes, if the humor falls flat, it can be dangerous. You can start with an anecdote just like I started, and that's one of my favorite openings. You can start with a question. You can start with a question saying, if we cancel X project, what percentage of depreciation or what percentage of profit would it have on the bottom line? But one of my favorites, and something that has worked for me time and time and time again, in presentation after presentation, meeting after meeting, training after training, is the callback. And the callback is your ability to take something that happened on that particular day, something that happened on that particular day at that particular time, and then weave it into your presentation. For example, we started 5 minutes late, and the reason for that is because we wanted to go for prayers. So if I was to use that incident as a callback, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, we started 5 minutes late, and that's because we needed to go for prayers. Let's hope that all your prayers are answered and this presentation meets all your expectations. Because that incident is only unique to that particular audience. And that makes the audience feel special. Your ability to storytell with that incident immediately projects you as an expert and immediately presents you as somebody with warmth. Warmth plus competence is the formula for charisma. I'll touch upon it a little later in our discussion, but this is something important. In your story structure, open with impact, transition into your story, and your story will have characters. If you remember Mr. Felix, if you remember Miss Interviewer, if you remember the CFO and the shareholder, each of them have a particular characteristic. And if I remember, I told you Dinesh has a neck that started from has a stomach that starts from his neck. Each of these is carefully structured so that the characters become memorable to you, become real, authentic, and sincere. There'll always be a problem, there'll always be your solution, and then, of course, you will have your call to action. What it is that you ask, what is your ask from the decision makers? So Remember, your last words linger. Spend time crafting your conclusion. Be clear as to what you want. One of the worst presentations that I have ever seen, crash and burn, was where a fabulous analytic was done and it was presented over 45 minutes. And then the board said, we completely agree with your analysis. What do you want from us? And unfortunately, the two people presenting the proposal had not thought about what they wanted out of it. So it's important that you don't get exposed to paralysis by analysis. Make sure that you have your conclusion, make sure that you have your ask, make sure that you have your call to action crystal clear. Write it down, have coffee over it, be on the same page, because this is ultimately what you want out of your presentation. There's a very nice book that's written by a gentleman called Joseph Campbell, and the name of the book is The Hero with a Thousand Faces. In this analysis, Joseph Campbell goes into depth with regard to over millennia how all stories have this common storytelling structure that we've just covered, but I want to go into it a little bit more detail. It covers movies, it covers books, it covers poems, and this is called the hero's journey. If you want some homework over this long holiday, once you know this particular model, just sit down with a cup of coffee or tea for 20 minutes and think of your favorite movies, think of your favorite books, and see whether you are able to superimpose this hero's journey onto that. All blockbuster movies have this particular story structure, and it is that the hero will start off in a very normal environment. The hero will start off in a very normal environment, but then there is a need for the hero to set out on a journey. It might be to save a village, it might be to set out on a quest, but then on that journey, the hero keeps on failing. Lack of resources, lack of people, being backstabbed, the environment changing, and the hero cannot come out of that on their own. But at that point in time, there walks in a guru, there walks in a mentor who gives the solution and from an external perspective. The implementation of that solution creates a new tomorrow, creates a new paradigm, and that's where the solution gets impacted. For example, if you take Lord of the Rings, Bilbo Baggins is very happy in the Shire, but then, thanks to Gandalf, they set off on a quest. Failure after failure, challenge after challenge, but the solution always comes from outside. And over numerous different books, the quest to destroy that one ring brings them all together, and once the ring has been destroyed, there you have a new paradigm. I want to share with you a story, and this is the first time that I'm ever sharing this story because it happened recently. And when I joined PwC in one of my first classes, there was a 60-year-old gentleman. He used to wear a baseball cap, snowy white beard, was 60 years old, and he was sitting for CMA Part 2. So I asked him, Mahmood, why? Why not enjoy your retirement? Why not stay with your grandchildren? He said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be relevant. I want to start my own business. I want to be able to understand what these young people are talking to me about. And I told him, Mahmoud, you are an inspiration to me. What you're doing right here, right now, at 60 years old, taking a paper called Strategic Financial Management with 6 different chapters, a 4-hour exam, 100 MCQs, 2 essay questions, a different calculator to master. What you're doing right here, right now, that is an inspiration to me. Mahmoud goes to the exam, and you know what happens? In the exam, the computer malfunctions. It's a computer-based exam that is done in a third-party premises, and the computer malfunctions. No matter what they did, the computer does not switch on. And then halfway through the exam closes off. We try our best for a month, but the regulatory body says, bad luck, this happens, you will have to take the exam again. 60 years old, 6 months of sacrifice, the opportunity cost of spending Wednesdays and Saturdays with his family. He comes back and he says, I will not give up. And then he sits the exam and he writes to me saying, I was thinking about you. I passed the exam. I plan to use this story to tell people in my classes, clients that I meet, candidates that I mentor, the value of persistence. 6 decades of experience doesn't prepare you for that one moment of something going wrong. It's not being knocked down that's important. It's the ability to get up time after time until you achieve your objective. That persistence will inspire me for a number of years to come because this 60-year-old gentleman is my CMA mentor. And that's something that I will hold true for a long period of time. And that is an example of using the story structure. You will see it in books, Cinderella cleaning the kitchen, sisters go on a ball, Cinderella cannot go, fairy godmother comes in, solves the problem, she goes, loses the glass slipper, but then in the finding of the glass slipper is where you find the new tomorrow. Who can forget Star Wars? Who can forget Star Wars? Luke Skywalker, very happy in his village, but then comes the attack, and then he sets out on a quest, fails until Obi-Wan Kenobi takes him under his wing, and then continues to fail until he's able to meet his father. And that leads to a paradigm shift. And one of my favorites, Harry Potter. Living under the staircase, receives a letter to go to a wizard's university, not allowed by his aunt and uncle, taken under the wings of a wizard, and then over the course of 7 books, continuously facing difficulty until finally, a hero, not him, but someone else, creates a new paradigm shift, a new tomorrow. Each of your solutions structured in this manner, explaining where we are right now, the journey where we are about to go, the problems that we will face, the support system that we will bring in. And once we achieve that solution, the new tomorrow that the company, that the client, or that your portfolio will see, that, my friends, is a powerful tool. That is something that allows you to convince even the most hardcore skeptic. The age-old question is this: how do you know that a presentation is truly made with you in heart? Because audiences don't want to be taken for a ride. The one thing that they want you to be is they want you to have them at the core of your presentation. In all of your presentations, in all of your storytelling, it's important to be authentic, sincere, and credible, because you are putting yourself on the line, your emotion to be tested, and your confidence that comes through that presentation should be what drives that decision. Maya Angelou says the quality of your communication determines the size of your result. And the quality of your communication comes from your true authenticity, your sincerity, and your credibility. The diligence of your research, the depth of your analysis, all weave together in that impactful story that resonates with your counterparty, with your clients, with your stakeholders, with your employees. That allows you to get the solution that you want. If you follow Shark Tank, you'd know that Mark Cuban, the billionaire shark, entrepreneur, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, outspoken, opinionated, but someone who has practical, applicable solutions that can be done by anybody. And one of his quotes is, in business, you're always selling, you're always closing. But ultimately, nobody likes to be sold to. I mean, one of the most painful experiences you would face is that if you go to a retail shop and then someone stands behind you trying to sell you things. You don't like it, I don't like it. But Mark Cuban says, put yourself in the shoes of the person to whom you're selling. Don't sell your product. Don't talk about mileage. Don't talk about fuel efficiency. Don't talk about second-hand market value. Solve their problem. In other words, communicate your solution from their perspective. Understand what it is that they're facing, what is their problem, what is their opportunity cost, and structure your solution in such a way that you can make it disappear. If your story, your presentation is able to do this, then you will stand out among your competition. Warren Buffett famously says this, that in his office, he does not have his bachelor's degree, he doesn't have his master's degree, but what hangs there on his wall in his office in Nebraska, Omaha, is a $100 public speaking and storytelling course that he took with Dale Carnegie. And he says that if you want to double your net worth, then take a course in communication and presentation skills. This is a person who is worth 100 billion US dollars, converted every single one of his shareholders to multi-millionaires. And if he mentions something, it's something that we would like to consider as well. Who doesn't like bonuses? Who doesn't like additional tips? So this is where I generally finish off my presentations, but I'd like to give you something extra. So bonus tip number 1 is the power of metaphor. My daughter is having a toothache, and yesterday we took her to the dentist. And the dentist said, there's a tiny tooth here. But when we take that out, we've got to be careful because this baby tooth is like a mother. And this baby tooth is the mother to the permanent tooth that is coming after that. If the mother gets sick, the baby gets sick. So this illustrates the value of diligence in what you are doing. Don't do a slipshod work in the short term because you will suffer in the long term. So if you are trying to convince somebody of why you need to invest in research and development, why it's important to invest in the tools for artificial intelligence, why although there is no direct revenue connection, the value of it will be felt in the long-term delivery, your ability to use metaphor, your ability to take something and draw a parallel, simplify the complex using a story is a valuable skill to have. Bonus tip number 2 is with regard to amplify to simplify. This diagram shows you the tallest point on earth and the deepest point of the ocean. So you are able to take the tallest point of the earth, Mount Everest, and you're able to dump it into the Mariana Trench. Now, what does that do for you? If you are able to do this with your capital adequacy ratios, your tier 1 and tier 2 capital, if you are able to disclose this, or if you are able to communicate this to a skeptic with regard to your debt to equity, your debt to assets, your interest cover, this metaphor creates a picture in the minds of the audience. And if you are able to use this, instead of using the time tested method of percentages and times, you and I have suffered enough about it, we understand it. But it may not be that straightforward to the rest of the world who may be non-finance professionals, but that doesn't mean they are any less of decision makers. So if you're in the business of advising startups, or if you're in the business of advising high net worth individuals, your ability to simplify to amplify is something that always gets appreciated because they may not have the willingness to spend time going through the numbers. But your ability to put that in a succinct nutshell is something of value. Bonus tip number 3 is the power of acronyms. Very often, when I have to explain how a particular transaction will impact all 3 financial statements, this is the metric that I use. I always say in accounting, you only have 5 things. There's nothing more than that. Accountants for 500 years don't tell this to you because we want to make money, of course. So there are 5 elements in any financial statements. You've got the assets and the liabilities and the capital on the balance sheet. You have income and expenses on the income statement. Every year the income goes into capital, and that's how you create shareholder wealth. So another analogy that I use here is like the financial statements are like a pair of jeans. It's got 5 pockets, 3 in the front, 2 at the back. Income and expenses are the 2 big pockets. They funnel into capital every single year. And then with that, you are able to generate assets. If you are able to show assets, the bank will be willing to give you the loans as well. So your ability to structure acronyms is something that you might want to think of in your short-term storytelling. One of the other workshops that I do is on impromptu speaking. You never get a chance, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. In your sphere of expertise, in your sphere of credibility, you have a vast ocean of knowledge. You have passed some of the most difficult exams known to man. You have served apprenticeship in some very difficult organizations, and you have worked in highly stressful environments. You are subject matter experts. You can't get ready to speak. You got to stay ready to speak. So whenever you are asked a question, breathe, smile, maintain eye contact. You have this vast body of knowledge, tap into it, and then use the storytelling model in order to communicate. Don't run away from questions. Don't run away from impromptu presentations. Relish it, expect it, and nail it every single time, because you never know which opportunity it will open up for you. Bonus tip number 5 has to do with charisma. And charisma is a combination of two things: competence, you know what you're doing, you're a proven expert at what you're doing, and warmth. You're reachable, you're connectable, and you're personable. In this matrix, ideally, you want to be in the charisma zone. High amount of warmth, high amount of competence. But then what happens if you are, let's say, very warm, but not so competent? Unfortunately, in the finance world, that might classify you as a pushover. You're very nice to speak to, but you might not know what you're speaking about. So if that is the case, if you're very warm, but you're low on the competence aspect, you might not get the presentation result that you want. But what if you're on the other extreme? You're hyper competent. There's no one who can outwork you, but you don't have the time, you don't have the energy to connect with your peers. That might make you very cold. You get the job done, but then you're a loner and nobody else can connect with you. You might not get the invitations, you might not get the breakthroughs, you might not get the projects that you're looking for. Competent but not warm. I want to look at zone number 3, the danger zone. Not warm and not competent also. And generally, I like to call this a disaster. Because if you're not warm and you're not competent, there's a huge problem. If you don't know how to connect to people, neither do you have the technical competence. But ladies and gentlemen, if you reach zone number 4, the charisma zone, then you will join the pantheon of great storytellers, of great presenters, of great business leaders such as these. You will be able to speak, present, convince, connect, authentically make a difference in what is it that you want to do. Now you will notice that among all of these great speakers, right, among Abraham Lincoln, Margaret Thatcher, Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, you will be able to see that there is one part that is left blank with a question mark, and that is for you. Because your ability to be competent is not questioned here. And your ability to be a warm human being is not questioned here. But putting that together in a storytelling framework, in a presentation that truly stands out over a period of time, that makes you a clear differentiator. That's bonus tip number 5. I want to leave you with this particular quote, and it is something that I very often end my presentations with. It's one of my favorite things to tell people about. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond. You can't control what happens out there, but you can control what happens in here. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start right now and you can change the end. You have a choice to make right now. Will you hide behind the spreadsheets and will you allow AI to take over your world? Or are you going to spend some time becoming a better, more efficient, more charismatic, competent, and warm storyteller? Stand out, step out, and take what truly belongs to you. Thank you for listening to me. I wish you all the best. Happy storytelling. and good luck.
Hisham, we didn't commit that unforgivable sin today, the unforgivable sin of having a boring technical session on a Friday evening. And this is something, this is the kind of session which we never had before. Usually our sessions are, very technical and filled with technical questions. And it's really refreshing and really insightful also. Although we have been working in finance so long, I mean, even it really raised some questions personally in me as well on how we are working and what is the purpose of our presentations and what are we trying to achieve. And I'm sure personally, this had a big impact on me. And I'm sure that most of our participants will benefit from today's session. And I think we didn't get many questions on our Q&A box today. I believe that it's because all the participants were glued into the stories and insights you are sharing. So it's really interesting, Hisham, and thank you for taking time on your holiday and making a wonderful, impactful, insightful presentation for us today. And I have only one question. And with that, I think we will be winding up the session. Hisham, in my experience, and in general, I've heard great authors saying this, that the ability to tell stories will come with extensive amount of reading. If you see all the great authors, all the great storytellers or movie directors are avid readers. So when you quoted Rudyard Kipling and some other motivational speakers, and I really wanted to ask you, do you recommend any books specifically on this area, or it could be fiction or non-fiction or anything related to business, the books you have enjoyed, or any podcasts or any blogs which you will recommend to our members and participants today?
Sure, Usman. Yeah. So yes, I mean, I have been an avid reader, and I used to read even the newspaper that was used to wrap the fish. So yes, I think that with regard to the reading part of it, it gives me one huge benefit because we say we learn from mistakes, right? But who likes committing mistakes? Nobody really likes committing mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes. So if someone has gone through an experience and written a book on it, why not read the book? Now, here, many people ask me this question. No, why can't I just read an article? There's no real substitute for a book. The amount of research that has been done and the amount of work that goes into structuring a book is truly important. And it's very difficult to recall what's written in an article. But for some reason, at least for me, the stickability of the knowledge in a book is a lot better. One of my favorite books comes from George S. Clason, written in 1926, and it's called um, The Richest Man in Babylon. It's to do with personal finance, and I always recommend this to people. It's something that is really really important. And one of the other books that I've read that always stuck in my mind was a book called The Quants. If my memory serves me right, it was written by a gentleman called Scott Patterson because I always struggled with the higher level math that is associated with our business. But this particular book, it was written in such a nice way that it demystified a lot of things, especially when I had to do quantitative method exams. This was something that was really, really, really useful. And there was another very nice book. I forget the name of the author, but it's called The Physics of Finance. It really does help to see how someone from a different market, a different time period, a different objective sees the same numbers but with a different angle. And you just never know where you can present this information, where it holds personal benefit to you as well. And very often there is nothing new under the sun. We had financial crisis in the mid 90s. We had financial crisis in the early 2000s. We had financial crisis in 2009, 2011. It seems now that it's an annual experience. It's not like if it will happen, it's when will it happen and who will be the culprit. So if you are able to see what happened in the past, you might actually be able to learn from it. And as Isaac Newton famously said, when he got burned in the North Sea oil scandal, I can predict the movement of the stars, but I can't predict the movement of man. Usman, I do think there are a couple of questions on the chat box. If you don't mind, can I answer them?
Uh,
I can see three questions.
Yes, Hisham, I think we can take the relevant ones.
Okay, perfect. So I have a question that says, what's your advice to a person who is having a fast-paced life and is very lazy, who wants to master this storytelling or even start in the first place? It's very simple, because ultimately after a particular point in time, your technical competence doesn't necessarily get you forward. Your ability to connect, your ability to create a difference, and your ability to be perceived as an expert becomes really, really important. Storytelling is something that is all around us. I mean, if you take the famous example of Rajinikanth, he was a bus driver who became probably one of the most famous movie stars in the world. Why? Because he believed in his storytelling capability. People used to come to that particular bus stop simply to see his antics. So, on an amplified level, this is the skill of building your personal brand. Your ability to stand out with your skills, your competence, your communication, your storytelling, your problem solving, your negotiation, your team building, and your ability to lead in these challenging times. If you want that, storytelling is a great place to start, because ultimately, storytelling is your superpower. You already have the financial capability. I mean, earlier we used to say A levels is enough. Then we used to say, okay, you need to get a bachelor's degree. Then we said you got to top it up with a professional qualification. Now it seems like a master's degree is an entry level requirement. While at the same time, on the other side, we have artificial intelligence coming through. Now, thankfully, you and I are not entry level. So, if that is the case, how do you take your professional expertise, your qualifications, and your expertise in the industry, harness them together, and put them across in such a way that it creates an impact? Storytelling is the way you want to go. You have these stories within you for sure. If you have worked in finance, without a doubt you will have very interesting stories. And when you get finance people going, they're some of the funniest people that you will know. Dry sense of humor, but some of the funniest things that you know, because ultimately you know everything that goes behind in the business. You've seen the decisions, and when someone says something, you know where it is going to head to. But it just takes 5 minutes a day, half an hour a week, one weekend per month, whichever it may be. If you sit on YouTube, or if you just pick one particular book, I mean, one of my favorites is Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Very simply written, over 100 years old, absolute classic. It's an absolute classic that I try to reread at least once every 2 years. So if you want my recommendation, this would be, the effort is absolutely worthwhile. But unlike studying for a professional exam, it's a very pleasant experience. It's the ability to see how you can tailor your communication, and it doesn't have to be according to a stereotype. Be you, be authentically you, be only you, because there's only one you. So I hope that answers that question. I've got a second question from Amani. How do you decide on the spot how to tailor your PPT to that audience? So, interestingly enough, when I was invited to speak at the Chartered Accountants Conference a few months ago, I had a story lined up. And that story was the one I told you right now at the beginning. So that was the story that I wanted to tell, but it's a little bit of a lengthy story. And the speaker before me, unfortunately, had overrun his time slot. Now, it was my slot was just before lunch, and you know how everybody gets with lunch, right? So now I already was entering into an atmosphere where there was a little bit of resistance, because a speaker overshooting and then the next speaker coming in, it's a little bit of a risky thing. So I decided to change the story, and the story that I told was a little bit more humorous. It was about a 67-year-old investor who diversified his portfolio because Nescafe was free on the Colombo Stock Exchange. So for me, it was interesting to do, because I've done these presentations for a fair number of times. But for you, if you want to build your impromptu speaking skills, especially if it involves a PowerPoint, I would say over prepare. So very often when somebody is running a race that is a mile, if you practice by running a mile, that means at the end of exactly a mile, you're tired. But if you practice by running for 1.5 miles, that means you build your endurance more than anybody else. The best illustration for this, Michael Phelps. So he was a physically gifted specimen. He had longer hands, longer span, and longer feet, and he was taller than most human beings. He was built for the sport of swimming, but he swam 8 hours a day. Why does this gifted specimen need to do more? Because he had the hunger to achieve more. So if my memory serves me right, he won 27 medals in the Olympics, 25 of them gold. So if you do what everybody does, you will get what everybody does. But if you do a little bit more, every presentation gets better. And our greatest fear is that all our presentations need to be scripted. But if you are speaking about something that you already know, then it's truly not impromptu speaking. For example, if you have been the CEO of an analytics company, or if you have been the financial controller, or if you have been the head of internal audit for the last 10 years for this company, you know, and you know that you know. It's just a matter of taking that step back, taking a deep breath, making sure that you really, really understand the question and you have really, really nailed down the audience, and then making that presentation. Because there are three types of presentations: the presentation that you prepared, the presentation that you gave, and the presentation that you hoped you could have given. So with any presentation, there will be a significant amount of impromptu elements. But in this particular sphere specifically, you're not talking about something that you don't know. It's something that you studied all your life. It's something that you worked in all of your life. And it's something that you solve problems for clients every single day. Have that confidence that you know it. Because if you are able to take the same PowerPoint deck, and if you are able to on the spot see, okay, this is the angle that I want to speak about. If you are able to make that shift, and it comes with practice, it will become something that is truly valuable, because it takes a lot of effort to make it look effortless. But remember, nobody in the audience will know that you changed it. Nobody in the audience will know that you made a mistake. Nobody in the audience will know that you changed your perspective. So the only person who knows that it was impromptu will be you. So slow it down. Have the confidence that you know what you're talking about. You worked in this your entire adult life. There's no doubting that you're a finance professional. It's just a matter of having the confidence to deliver it. And that happens if you put yourself on the spot every single time. I mean, just to give you perspective, since I know Amani worked for Amber Research as well. The morning meeting presentation practice that we got way back in 2006, 2005, that's something that I have always cherished, because it was to make a 1 minute investment idea every single morning to the entire firm for every single analyst. So that sort of training, if you put yourself out there, you will be able to build that skill. I hope that answers your question. I have one more. How do we tackle a group who is, oh, my pleasure, who is old school, very resistant to change? What's the best way to approach them? Mind you, we will get there one day. So when we will have assistant accountants coming to us, they will also have this very same problem. I mean, who we consider old school and resistant to change, when they entered the workspace, they would have been cutting edge and the latest available. So it's a function of trying to understand where is their resistance coming from. Very often it might be the human tendency that we don't like change, or it might be that it involves a significant amount of effort from their end, or it might be that they feel underappreciated, or it might be that we are ramming down a solution where we didn't get their input on. So if you can isolate, rather than what is the resistance, specifically what is the source of that resistance, it might be a particular person whom you might be able to speak informally and identify what can I do to make this better, or it might lie in the past. Maybe while we are making this proposal, it's possible that the same proposal has been made 3 times in the past and it has been shut down. There always may be a particular reason. So if you are able to identify that pain point, it might not be a rational thing. It might be irrational, but it doesn't mind. It doesn't matter. Because if it's a pain point, it's something that you might have to address. So if it is the case that you're making this,